and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the one and only Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Glorious, no, I won't give in till I'm victorious, and I will defend. From far and wide and light years away, cast from the shadows, and I light my way. You think you know me? I'm just a sexy boy. Oh, I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. Without further ado, from parts unknown, your host with the most, Nick. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of
All right, we are here with this week's episode of the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Nick, as always. Hope everybody enjoyed their 3-day weekend on Memorial Day weekend. A lot has been going on since the last time I was on air with Dizzy Reed. Want to thank once again for everybody checking that episode out with Mr. Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses. Got some great feedback on some of the stories he told, like this being part of the sorority and the fraternity, as well as getting some great feedback on people that are checking out his solo album, so make sure you do that. But as I mentioned last week, today's guest is the Pond Father himself, Conrad Thompson. I sat down this weekend. We discussed all things about Starrcast, how it got going. It's part of All In weekend in Labor Day in Chicago. We talked all about his podcast, wrestling, got into a little bit of music too. I was kind of shocked that Conrad had seen some big bands like Highly Suspect and Hailstorm. Said they played in Huntsville a bunch before they broke out and were major stars. So it was a great conversation. Can't wait for you to hear that. We'll remind everybody that I will be on Podcast Row that weekend in Chicago, Illinois for Starrcast for All In weekend. Looking forward to it. It's pretty much sold out, which Conrad said in the interview, except for a few general admission tickets. But for the most part, pretty much sold out. Going to bring some unique content, have some sweet killer guests on while I'm on Podcast Row that I'll be bringing right here to the podcast. So it's going to be a blast. I'm really looking forward to it. Wish it was Labor Day weekend right this second. Make sure you're following the podcast on the Twitter, Nick's RW Podcast. Make sure you're at Instagram, Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com on YouTube. All that good stuff. Go over to Pro Wrestling Tees. Big announcement. They're having a 5-year anniversary sale starting June 1st through June 4th. 25% off on all merchandise. No code needed. So go over, get your official Rock and Wrestling Podcast t-shirts over there. 25% off starting on Friday, June 1st through June 4th. Do that. Help a brother out. Gonna need some beer money for Chicago, so help a brother out there. Also, I mentioned to Conrad in the interview that one of the cool things that they really do that I really, really like is when you buy a shirt, whether it be from Tony Schiavone, Bruce Pritchard, Eric Bischoff, they call you and thank you for buying your shirt. Well, what happened when Monday with Tony Schiavone, I talked to Conrad about that's my favorite of his 3 podcasts. Tony Schiavone, it was the voice of my childhood. He's my all-time favorite wrestling announcer. When I got into wrestling real hard in 1997, 1998, I was a WCW guy. He was calling the action, so it was great, and I love to see that he's back calling action now with MLW on BN Sports on Friday night, so it's awesome to hear him call that. But on the podcast, it's just so over the top. He's almost like the Bob Saget of wrestling. Had this wholesome image of him, but when you really get down to it, it's like, holy crap, he's this dirty old man with these dirty sense of humor and makes these ridiculous jokes. Well, last week I bought a shirt back in March, and Tony finally called me, and it's a really cool experience. And Tony was a great guy to talk to, and we just shoot the shit. He thanked me for buying a shirt. I told him I got the Slapdick Nation one also. So it was really cool that Tony calls you, and it was great. I sat, I got a good 5 to 7 minute conversation out of Tony Schiavone, my all-time favorite wrestling announcer. So very, very cool stuff. He's going to be there that weekend in Chicago for Starrcast. I'm hoping to grab an interview with him. He said to come up and say hi. I'm definitely already planning my promo for it. So very, very cool stuff that happened since I last was with you. I got to talk to Conrad. Obviously, you'll be hearing that interview in a little bit. So make sure you're following all the social media. I also want to thank and give a shout out to my big time sponsor, Rack House Whiskey Club. Mentioned them last week, so make sure that you do go over to their website, rackhousewhiskeyclub.com. Basically, you're going to go over there. Every whiskey tells a story. Basically, it's a subscription box service. They're going to deliver you a premium bottle of a certain type of whiskey, accessories, tons of other stuff. Basically, go over to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com. Basically, you're going to join. They're going to tell you all about these different distilleries and everything that comes with it. You'll get that box. It's going to be handcrafted. You get a new delivered box every 2 months by a head distiller. And then you basically can enjoy it. And basically what you get in the box is you get that 750 milliliter bottle of that premium spirit, whatever you really, really want for the nice hot summer day. Whiskey accessories that come with it, some cocktail recipes, some tasting notes, all of that. So definitely go over to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com. Get yourself signed up. It's Father's Day's coming up. Give it for your dad, your grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever it is, or maybe you just want it. Summer's upon us. Memorial Day weekend this past weekend. You're going to be out hanging by the pool. You're going to be having a big pool party, the barbecue. Nothing better than to have some whiskey and have a unique story to tell all your friends and family that you're drinking about. So go over to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com, sign up today, and you'll get your first box right away. So, Conrad Thompson going to be coming up here on the other side, but I want to mention my upcoming schedule here on the podcast that we've got. As we said, today, May 30th, as this drops, is the Conrad Thompson interview. Next week, well, lucky for you guys, going to get 2 episodes again. I just lined up 2 very, very big guests that I said, you know what, going to do 2 episodes next week. Next Wednesday, June 6th, you'll get Matt Kuhn, who hosts Why It Ended, a great podcast with Robbie E. I'm going to talk about that in a second, why I'm going to have Matt Kuhn on. And then Thursday, June 7th, is going to be Tom Pritchard, Bruce's brother, going to talk all about his beginnings and how he kind of trained some of the guys in WWE, all that, his time in pro wrestling. June 13th will be Braden, as I talked about. He's putting on a huge music festival in the Bay Area. He's in Suburban Paranoia and some other heavy metal bands. Also a big wrestling fan. We're going to talk some wrestling. June 20th, going to have a special edition, not really a guest episode. Money in the Bank is that previous Sunday. Instead, what I've decided to try to do is for each big WWE pay-per-view, either have a preview or a review show. So for WrestleMania, we did a preview show. I decided for Money in the Bank, it's one of the big 5 now, along with SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble, that Money in the Bank is going to be a review show. So Wednesday, June 20th, you will get a review show of Money in the Bank. June 27th, I'm going to have one of the members of heavy metal band from Los Angeles, California, Void Vader. We'll discuss all about that. They've got an upcoming July tour. And then my other big guest right now, I'm still waiting on a couple confirmations for the 4th of July episode. Going to do some American-themed stuff. And then July 11th is going to be AJ Kirsch. Maybe you know him from Tough Enough in 2011. He's also in Hood Slam as Bros of Joe Brody. He was on the Stone Cold podcast today that dropped. So he'll be my guest Wednesday, July 11th. So got ourselves booked out all the way to just about July 11th. So you got some great, great guests coming up here. Some great, great content. Now, as I mentioned, Matt Kuhn's going to be my guest next Wednesday. Matt Kuhn hosts a podcast with, he's formerly of Impact Wrestling, Robbie E. And they do Wide Ended. It's a great concept. They look at guys that had their moment in the fame. They looked at like Glacier, Justin Krebel, who I interviewed, Al Snow, D'Lo Brown, Muhammad Hassan, who's also a guest on here. And they talk about why it exactly ended. Why did they have their moment in the sun? Then why did it go away? And I encourage you all to go and download and subscribe to that podcast because it's a very, very good podcast. But I would also encourage you to do so. Tomorrow's episode is Marty Jannetty that they're going to have on. And I decided, you know what, this is a great episode to do it. They wanted some sponsorship. I decided, what the heck, I'll fork over a little money, and I am a sponsor for the show. You'll hear a little 30-second spot about my podcast, this podcast, the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. So go download, subscribe, and you'll listen to that tomorrow. Excuse me there. So, Wide Ended with Robbie E. and Matt Kuhn. That'll drop tomorrow. Definitely go subscribe and do that. Another big development I've got here on the podcast. I know I've got lots happened in a week's time, and you'd be surprised in a week a lot can go on. So, what happened when Monday, where Tony Schiavone came up with this unique idea called Patreon, and basically it's different tiered levels that you join, and you get more bonus content. Now, there was some backlash on their end. Oh, the podcast is changing. You got to pay for it. No, that's not. It's just you want more content. Well, that I'm kind of doing the same thing. And I've got 3 packages here. If you go to patreon.com/RNW podcast, you can go and put for some money. Now, if you don't want to put this kind of money, just message me on any of the social media platforms and we can work something out. But basically, I have 3 packages there that start off at $20, goes to $40, and goes to $60. And the $20 is your basic package. You can grab a weekly sponsorship or anything you want to promote. It could be a podcast or wrestling promotion, upcoming show, upcoming tour. You'll get tagged in all the social media posts for that episode. And I'll hook you up with a free Rock and Wrestling Podcast t-shirt. Now, if you want to go a little bit more, the $40, the Parts Unknown package, you can basically you'll get weekly sponsorship in all future episodes as long as you want. You keep telling me however long you want. I will sponsor as much as you want. I'll put you on all the social media, everything you get. You get that free Rock and Wrestling Podcast, and you'll get a guest spot on one episode to promote whatever it is, to promote your podcast, to do an interview, a segment, fantasy book, whatever it is that is your product or whatever you want to do. You can come on for one episode once a month, and we'll talk about that. Then there's the Rockstar package. You get all those things for $60, but you'll have a weekly interview. You'll get to come on weekly and talk about your product, talk wrestling, whatever. And I'm adding in a little bonus, your choice of a free concert, pro wrestling event in your area, free of charge. I will pay for it for being a sponsor if you throw down on that. So go over to patreon.com/RW podcast. Pledge now. If it's a little expensive, message me. We'll work something out. So definitely do that and help a brother out. So coming up on the other side here, we've got Conrad Thompson, the Podfather himself from 83 Weeks, What Happened When Monday, and something to wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Also want to talk about on the other side, we're going to do a little Aftershock promotion, the music festival here in Sacramento, California, that's going down October 13th and 14th. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to spotlight some of the bands here on the other side of the interview. But coming up shortly is Conrad Thompson, the Podfather himself.
All right. I am here with the Podfather himself, Conrad Thompson. I appreciate you taking the time out to give me a little of your time because you are a busy man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
So first I want to start, obviously, I've told some of my listeners about Starrcast, so I want to get the man behind everything with it. So kind of how did it come about? Why now with a wrestling podcast convention, everything that led to it, everything, how did it get started?
I had the idea to do a wrestling podcast convention in late 2016 when it became apparent that Greg Price was not going to run the NWA Legends Fan Fest in Charlotte, North Carolina again. He had run a very successful convention for many, many years, and then for whatever reason, the decision was made. It wasn't sustainable. He wasn't going to do it again. And that was pretty disappointing to me because I'd grown to fall in love with the weekend. You know, a lot of my friends were there from all over the country, and it was the only time I got to see those guys. And I thought, man, this will be a fun opportunity to sort of keep it going. And at the same time, offer something pretty different, something pretty unique. And that idea was a wrestling podcast convention. The hotel wound up being booked, so it didn't work out. However, we were able to put together something for all in weekend. I ran into Cody in January and pitched the idea of having their own sort of official convention and doing it with a wrestling podcast theme. He was intrigued, asked what the events might look like and what I had in mind. I showed him my itinerary, and he thought it was awesome. So we were off to the races.
That is really cool. So that you guys kind of just met and rock and rolled with it that way. I mean, looking at the event schedule, you're trying to make it as fan interactive as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to your co-host on What Happened When, since I bought a shirt, Tony Schiavone, and I told him, dude, you better be ready because I'm writing my promo out already.
Oh, that's great, man. People are looking forward to that. And we're trying to create unique experiences, and I think we're doing that. So hopefully people are digging it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was Labor Day weekend right now. I'm ready to go for it because it's going to be a blast, and getting a chance to be on podcast. So I think that's what's the coolest thing about the event is you're giving people a chance to build their brand that may not get the opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, it's sort of been a little controversial, I guess. People thought that, it was, I've been called a carny for the podcast row concept, but the reality is, included in that was 2 platinum VIP bracelets that we were selling for $179 each. So really, for about $100 more, you have the opportunity to get all the cross promotion that exists with the event, have a prime location, some guests to feature on your show, and then the ability to sort of record some of the content that happens that weekend and air it on your show. It feels like a worthwhile way to try to increase the fanfare and attention for both big shows and small shows alike.
Yeah, that was what drew me to it. I was like, absolutely, this is a huge opportunity, and just I think the overall spirit and being there with everybody that runs a wrestling podcast or is a wrestling fan, I was like, why wouldn't you want to do it?
I agree, man. I appreciate you saying that.
So, obviously you said the tickets did very well the first day they went on sale. You guys sold out of the VIP wristbands, and how many tickets are still left the general admission?
Well, that I don't know the number off the top of my head for, it's a general admission weekend pass. The actual stage shows are completely sold out. The weekend pass is essentially almost going to be like a WrestleCon type situation. The traditional meet and greets where you'll have wrestlers behind folding tables for pictures and autographs. But we've also got some fun common area stuff, like you were mentioning, cutting a promo with Tony Schiavone. So we've got some of those that will be, available for you as well. But I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. It's not a ton because I do believe that, we'll be at Fire Code sooner rather than later. But all the stage shows, man, that stuff sold out right away. Platinum was sold out in 7 minutes. Silver took about a half hour. Gold was done in 2 days.
That is amazing. Do you ever sit back and wonder, like, man, I'm just, a wrestling fan, and wow, what am I, like, look what I'm doing with just podcasting?
No, not really. I'm doing so much that it's hard to really take time to take a deep breath and sort of take it all in. But I am having fun creating, and I'm hoping that we get to keep this going and do it for a long time.
Yeah, it would be great if it was a yearly event because I definitely will be there with my own podcast or whatever it may be because it's definitely going to be a blast.
Well, that's the plan, man. We would love for this to be a huge success and be able to come back and do it again, sometime next year.
Absolutely. So for some of my listeners, obviously I pimp the shit out of your guys' podcast because you guys inspired me to start my own podcast. I was like, you know what? I'm just a wrestling fan too. Why not? So how did you get hooked up with Bruce, with Tony, with Eric? How did it all come about that you got together with some of the biggest names, minds that have ever worked in pro wrestling?
Man, I made a pitch. I had an opportunity to meet these guys and said, hey, I've got an idea. And I made a pretty strong case of how I thought we could create different content in a unique format, but most of all, how we could monetize it. And one by one, everybody eventually agreed and came on board, and here we are.
Yeah, so your monetizing is, the T-shirts alone are one, they're hilarious because I feel like you're hitting a market of outside wrestling fans. I'll wear these shirts out in public that are non-wrestling fans. Like, where'd you get that low-key Big Hog shirt? I'd love to get that.
Yeah, man, that was the idea. Let's create non-wrestling wrestling shirts, and that's a little bit of a different approach. But I wanted something that you could wear to the grocery store or to a bar down the street, the neighborhood bar, and it not just be something that you could only wear if you were going to see Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, because I've had a ton of people like, I'm going to go buy one, and that's what's great. And the experience with Tony or Bruce or Eric calling you, is that kind of what really is driving the T-shirt sales?
Oh, for sure. My intention with everything that we do, and this just goes back to the sales philosophy, is you need to build $100 worth of value and then ask for $50. And that's what we tried to do here. Is we tried to say, you know what, let's come up with cool T-shirt designs and let's sell them for basically what everybody else is, but let's make ourselves different. Let's make ourselves better, a better value than anybody else. What can we do? And I thought the answer was, let's provide an experience. So now you get a shirt for the same price you would anywhere else, but really what you're paying for is a shirt. But in reality, you're getting an experience. And that's what I wanted to do, is so people to sort of think about, should I or shouldn't I buy this shirt? And the shirt almost be secondary. And so really people are paying for the phone call from Bruce, Eric, or Tony, and the shirt is just a little bonus on top.
Yeah, I had Tony call the other night, and he said you're a wrestling promoter now. He said to tell you that when I interviewed you. So.
Well, that's funny. Tony's pretty steadfast in his opinion on that, and it's not the way I would originally have imagined it all going, but I guess he does make a good point when it comes to not just shows, but conventions and merchandise and live events. I mean, I guess.
So a lot of what you're doing with the podcast, Starrcast, everything like that, does that really come from your mortgage background and being in sales for so long?
Not necessarily the mortgage background, but certainly sales. I think everything in life is one way or another can be drilled down to its sales one way or another. You're asking someone to do something on some level in almost every aspect of your life. And, a lot of that is just understanding the psychology of why sales work. And I think my inquisitive nature for the psychology of things is really what's made me a wrestling fan too.
Absolutely, because you're the Podfather for a reason, and I sit there at work all day and I listen to the archives, everything, because it's just so great and it's hilarious. I love it. So it's great stuff, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you saying that. We're working hard to create something that people are hopefully passionate about and care about, and so far so good.
So one of the things that I've always had kind of a question with you is you continuously say on the shows that you've subscribed to the wrestling newsletter for years. How do you feel about, a guy like Meltzer that gives away kind of, I wouldn't say gives away, but may spoil things for certain fans? Have you always taken it, I'm enthralled with the backstage stuff, or how have you always taken his kind of work?
I've always been a fan. 21-year subscriber. People who are upset about spoilers shouldn't be reading it. But at the same time, if you don't want to know what happened in a movie, maybe don't read long, detailed reviews or go look for pictures from the filming. And I think, there's two types of people. There's people who don't want to know any of the spoilers for Star Wars. They just want to go and enjoy the movie cold and be surprised. And I've got friends like that. But I've got other friends who, the minute a trailer is out, or the minute there is a promo out, or the minute there's a behind-the-scenes picture posted, or any sort of analysis, the weekend that comes out after a private screening or whatever, they have an insatiable thirst for it. And I think you can be either of those fans. I don't think you have to be, everybody has to be one or the other. There's a place for both. And I happen to be in the fan group that wants to know the information. So I enjoyed the Wrestling Observer newsletter and think anyone who takes issue with it is really kind of silly.
Yeah, that's what, as I've gotten older, has enthralled me in pro wrestling, is I like to know all the backstage workings, because it's such a fascinating business when you think about everything.
No doubt about it. It's unlike any other. That's for sure.
So obviously you have 83 weeks with Bischoff. You have Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Pritchard, What Happened When, Monday, and they're all vastly different. Which one of the three would you say is your favorite to record, that you do weekly with each guy?
Tony's is the most fun to record because there's less of a format. It's less structured. It's more fast and loose. But, when it comes to the actual research, nothing's more painstaking than the Bruce Pritchard one. But, I'm having fun with it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I will say this, you drill the shit out of Bruce. You don't let him get away with the politically correct or a no answer.
Yeah, that's the idea. I want to ask the questions that fans want to hear answers to, and we've had fun. Well, I've had fun doing it. I can't say that Bruce has always had fun, but I have.
Yeah, my favorite is What Happened When, because I grew up being a WCW fan first, and to hear basically the voice of my childhood and find out that he's a dirty old man just like I am is incredible.
Well, I didn't know that you were a dirty old man, but I'm glad I know now.
Well, I told him that too, and he's like, hey, he says that's the demographic he's looking for.
Well, I think we've nailed it.
So, obviously, you have been very successful with these podcasts. Have you got any feedback from, some of the boys in the business, whether it be guys in WWE or some, of Cody that listen to your shows?
Oh yeah, those guys love the shows. We've got tons of people who have really enjoyed the show and been with us really from day one. And we've been fortunate enough to have their support, because a lot of those guys will tweet about us, and they obviously have massive followings. And we've experienced a lot of growth just from some of the boys listening and talking about us on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I've with Ziggler, I've seen Cole, Graves, they're all big fans, and that's what got me hooked on it. I think I saw Ziggler retweet something. I was like, I need to check this out.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. He's got a massive following, and he was one of the first guys to start bragging about us. Him and of course Zack Ryder, and I think it gets overlooked a little bit that Kurt Hawkins was there almost from the very beginning, and together those guys were really the first flag bearers for us. And now a lot of the guys are listening, whether it's Fandango or whoever, and it makes sense to me. They spend so much time on the road. From town to town. If you're driving 3 hours a night every night, you're looking for something that's going to keep you entertained and make you laugh, and you can only listen to the same song so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm highly entertained by all three. I mean, you guys make me laugh, and I'm saying, being a California boy, I'm saying Roll Tide every other sentence now.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Thank you for that.
So along those lines, with everybody listening, have you ever, some of the boys, have you gotten some, has Bruce or Tony, anybody getting real heat for some of the stories they've shared on the podcast?
No, not really. We've upset some folks here or there along the way, but nothing that, we weren't able to straighten out and fix.
Yeah, I was the Russo episode on the network. I figured, he's gonna have his rebuttal, and everything that Bruce said was wrong, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, you're a big wrestling memorabilia collector like I am. I spend probably half my paycheck doing that. What's your best piece that you have in your total collection?
Probably a Ric Flair robe. I think that's the ultimate collectible as a wrestling fan, and I was fortunate enough to land one of those, and I mean, it's something everybody, wants to put on and get the picture with, and it's just it's something that's very unique, not just to wrestling, but to him specifically, and that's probably sort of the holy grail collectible for me.
That is awesome, and that's one of the things you can do with Starrcast, is wear a Ric Flair robe and take a picture in it. You
got it. And so one of the things we've done is we've recreated the old TBS set. And so, we'll even have some of the old ring-worn belts. So, like the belts the Horsemen use, and even the Big Gold belt, and the WCW belt that Vader and Ron Simmons and Lex Luger held. So if you want, you can have two of your buddies put the tag belts, over their shoulder, and there's a rumor that a TV belt might be there, so you can have one of your other buddies slide that in there. J.J. Dillon himself will actually be there. And then you could put on the Flair robe, pick up one of those world titles, and you can create your own Horseman promo from 1985 with the real J.J. Dillon and the real Tony Schiavone and what looks like the exact TBS set and the real belts, and relive it like it's 1985 all over again. It's good stuff.
That is, and then maybe you should create a second stage where it's the nap section, and you just play the J.J. Dillon podcast, and then everyone can nap. J.J.
Dillon will be there in our War Games retrospective, and we're going to make sure we pass out pillows just before he starts talking.
On my every guest I have, I like to find out how people got into pro wrestling because everyone's got a unique story. They remember that specific match they saw, event, whatever it may be. How did you, as a young kid, get into pro wrestling?
My parents got the double tape VHS for WrestleMania 4, and it was their way of pacifying me for the weekend. That was my weekend babysitter, and man, I was hooked after that. I was 7 years old, and I became a wrestling super fan. I think like a lot of fans, I grew out of it. I quit watching in early '93 or late '92, and didn't come back in until I saw Hulk Hogan wearing all black in the fall of September of '96 as I'm flipping through the cable TV channels at my family's house. And I was back in until maybe '05. I put it down again and then picked it back up in 2012, and I've been here ever since.
That brings to an interesting point because I'm the super fan, and I don't think I've ever really had my fandom drop off. What was it just the product, or maybe you finding different things that kind of drew you away from it?
Yeah, work, girls, real life. I mean, it's just a combination of, when you're going to college and you're trying to work a job and you're trying to do what knucklehead 21-year-olds do. It becomes a deal where you just, I just don't have time for all this. I'm going to have to give some of it up. And the choice was, I'm going to watch less and less of this. I'm going to still keep up with what's going on, and I'm going to keep my Observer subscription, and, I'll be able to sort of read the tea leaves. But the idea that I'm going to actually sit down and be invested 2 or 3 hours a week, I just didn't have time for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a super fan my life. There was a little period there where 2011 I kind of drew down because things like The Miz being champion, I was kind of like, I'm not really into this.
I was never really, who was champion never really mattered as much to me. It was very much, what else I had going on in my life. Like, if I'm honest with you, I would have to think hard about who's champion right now. It's just not, that doesn't usually affect my fandom one way or another. It's just what's going on in my real life, what do I have time for. But it's in that same way with everything. I've been a season ticket holder for Alabama for well over 10 years. And, I used to go to every single game, whether it was a road game, an away game, a home game, whatever. But as my, life has gotten busier and busier, then it became, well, I just go to the home games. And then it became, well, I'm still into it. I'm all about it, but I'm just going to go to the big home games. And now I still have those same tickets, and I go to 2 games a year.
Absolutely. Well, Alabama's tearing it up football-wise, man. They're killing everybody out there.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
No, it isn't. I'm also a football freak, so you guys are destroying anybody that comes along. So a little bit more. You have a great team. First, I'll give a shout out to Mr. Dave Silva because he did the graphics for my podcast. So I'll give a little shout out there. How did you get hooked up? Were these just guys you knew through sales? Because you have a phenomenal team that does great work, whether it be your social media, Matt Kuhn doing the music. How did you get hooked up with all these guys?
They listened to the podcast, and they reached out and said, hey, how can I help? And one by one, they would all bring their own unique skill set. Dave Silva was first. He created a phenomenal graphic for either the Vader episode or the Brian Pillman episode. I was so impressed with what he did. I asked if he would do a different one for us every week. He accepted, and we've kept that going now for years. He's been a phenomenal asset for us. I first met him through the Ric Flair show, where he was like a crank caller for our hotline, and he would cut hilarious promos, and we would run it on the show. And from there, we just developed that friendship, and when he started showing me what he could do graphically, man, we were off to the races. And he really is sort of the secret sauce of the show, because that image really sets the whole tone for what we're trying to do. And then, along the way, I got to meet Matt Kuhn, and Matt, told me that he had a passion for creating, themes and songs and music, and he created a custom opening entrance theme for us that we debuted at our very first live show, and it just worked. Dave Hancock has been a guy who's been sort of on my hype train for a while now, going back to the first podcast. We met at the NWA Legends Fan Fest and just had a lot in common, and he had an appetite for social media, and so he's been able to help us there, and we met Chris McDonald, who just did funny videos for Bruce and I just to get our attention, I think. And it worked, man. That dude is probably the most gifted video guy I've ever actually known. And now he does all of our, fun hype videos. We met Steve Kaufman along the way, who helps us with our YouTube channel. And just, it seems like, every few weeks there's another new team member and somebody stepping up saying, man, how can I help? Can I help with this? Can I help with that? And we've been blessed to have, now a real full-fledged team. Behind the scenes, I've got a guy named Chris who will help me organize my notes. And, I'll sort of have the directive of, hey, here's the story I'm trying to tell, and here's the resources I want to use, and be sure to pull this from that issue and this from this issue, and look through so-and-so's book for comments about this because I remember something there. He compiles it all, puts it in one place, and then I actually iron out the format of here's the story we're trying to tell. But it's been a team effort for sure, and we're pleased with the results.
Yeah, you got a great team. I mean, what happened when intro that Matt Kuhn created is good stuff. I mean, it's really cool. Being a musician myself, it's like that's not an easy thing just to create off the top of your head.
No, he has an ear for it, especially the silly stuff. The goofy themes. That's the stuff that really sets him apart when he's doing parody songs and things like that. He has an ear for that many don't.
So another thing that I got here kind of in my notes when I was preparing today is your live shows with Bruce have really taken off. How did you get the idea of, well, I do a podcast with Bruce, now let's take this thing on the road? Was it just kind of by accident, or was it like, hey, let's go make some more money and do live shows?
Yeah, I mean, a promoter hit us up for WrestleMania in Orlando and asked if we would do a live show. I didn't even really know what that meant. It was hard for me to imagine, what would that even look like? But once we did it, it sold out very quickly. We were very fortunate with that. But once we actually did the show, I was like, man, I think we could do more of these. So we very quickly announced that we were going to do some in the UK, and we were going to do a show in New York for SummerSlam. And on our way there, we were going to make stops in St. Louis and a few other places. And we were just very fortunate that people dug what we were doing and were willing to come out and support us. And we did 10 shows last year stateside. We'll probably do 20 or better this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to I'm going to be in LA for Survivor Series weekend and the Bay Area. I'm going to be at both of those, so I'm looking forward.
Oh, thanks for coming, man. That's nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
So another quick couple things here before we wrap up is some of your favorite episodes that you're just like, wow, this was great stuff that I didn't know, whether it be with Bruce, Eric, or Tony. What have been some episodes that are just resounding? Everybody's like, wow, that was great.
It's hard to say. I think everybody's opinion is really different based on what they grew up on. So, some people think the Sunny episode is the best one, and I can't say that. I can't speak to that. Others would say the Radicals is. I had somebody say the other day they thought the British Bulldog one is. I think it's so subjective because it's really what you grew up on. That's really what you're going to gravitate to, and who your favorites were as a kid. I think it's sort of a personal question. It's just a preference. What did you grow up on? What hits you in the feels, so to speak? That's probably what you're going to be most interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that got me actually hooked was your Monday Night Raw episode. The history and the creation of that's what got me hooked. I was like, wow, this is one, Conrad's drilling Bruce, and Bruce has got so many stories being in the WWE for so long. I'm like, this is incredible.
I would have never guessed that. That's the thing that's the reason my answer is always, it's different for everybody. If you would have asked me to list the shows that you think people said that about, that wouldn't have made the top 100, and we've only had 103 shows.
Yeah, that's what drew me to it, and I'm only 29 years old, so I was a kid when Monday Night Raw started, but I'm just fascinated on the creation of a show that's been a staple for however long.
Sure.
So you said obviously it's hard for you to keep up with the modern day products, but obviously the Roman Reigns controversy, obviously everybody booing him, whatever it may be, but who are some of your favorites in the current day product when you do get a chance to watch?
I appreciate what everybody's doing, for sure. And I do keep up with it. I haven't stopped watching it. I just record it and watch it and fast forward, slow down for the stuff I really care about. A couple of years ago, I was a super fan of what the New Day were doing. Individually, I really dig what Luke Harper does with his actual bell-to-bell matches. I've been intrigued with the way they've tried to tell this Brock Lesnar-Roman Reigns story because it does have us all sort of wondering, hey, how are they going to do this? What's next? And that's really what has sort of captivated my attention. I'm a fan of Shinsuke Nakamura as a heel. I love the idea of that. I never really understood him as a babyface. I think people are probably souring on that before they should. And I think that, there's probably never been a better time to be a wrestling fan because there's something for everybody. And that if you like women's wrestling, it's hard to beat a Charlotte or a Natalya. But they've also got something for the mainstream with Ronda Rousey. And that's something that would even get my parents, who are the most casual of wrestling fans, to tune in and check it out. So I think it's a good time to be a fan because you've got so much choice within the WWE, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or even NXT. But then beyond that company, just to see what all Cody and the Bucks have been able to do with Ring of Honor and New Japan, it's really something special.
Yeah, it really is. I grew up during the Monday Night Wars, and that was incredible. But it's cool to see that there's so many options now because for so many years it was WWE or nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So real quickly, I'm going to have your buddy Matt Kuhn on, your music guy, next week. So he said that you know a lot about music. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit on some of your favorite musical acts since it is the Rock and Wrestling podcast. Are you more a rock guy, or you make a lot of rap references in your podcast? Where's your musical taste lie?
All over the place, man. Around the house we listen to a little bit of everything. I mean, this weekend we've listened to NXS and Waylon Jennings and just there's no way you can pin down my taste, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, because it really is all over the place, from more modern stuff like Highly Suspect to Bob Seger and everything in between.
Oh wow, I would not picture that Conrad from Huntsville would know who Highly Suspect is.
Yeah, My Name is Human, man. What a hit that was a few years ago. I guess it's probably their only radio hit, but yeah, they've actually done quite a few shows here in town at small little bars, before they really started to pop off. But, Huntsville was a place that happened for a lot of people. Hailstorm was here probably 20 times before they ever had any sort of national attention. And I think that's the reason we're able to attract some of the bigger bands. Like, even Fozzy is going to be in little old Huntsville this summer. So it's been a pretty fun deal.
Yeah, it is. So, kind of piggybacking off that, when you were a kid and you went to live events, did a lot of live events, whether it be wrestling or anything, come to Huntsville? Or did you have to travel to the bigger shows?
No, yeah, we're like an in-between town, so they would go to Nashville, they would go to Atlanta, they would go to Birmingham, but I'm 3 hours from Atlanta, 2 hours from Nashville, 2 hours from Birmingham. So I'm sort of right in between. On the off chance we did get a show, it would be like on a Wednesday, and then they would hit, Nashville or Birmingham on a Thursday and Nashville on a Friday and Atlanta on a Sunday or whatever. So whenever we did get a big show, it was always on an off night because we're sort of between the town.
Awesome. Yeah, I live in Sacramento, and Sacramento's being the capital of California, be that way. They'll go to San Francisco or Oakland or Reno, so you were kind of in between and had to make that drive to go to a show.
Right.
So I appreciate you taking out some time here on your morning to spend with me. Real quickly, where can we find you on social media, and where can we find all of the podcasts, Starrcast, all that information?
Starrcast is the place to be this Labor Day weekend in Chicago. All In, of course, is going down there, but Starrcast has helped making it a destination weekend from Thursday to Sunday over Labor Day weekend in Chicago, Illinois. Starrcast.com is where all the legends in wrestling of professional wrestling will be. It's STARRCAST.com. That's 2 R's in Starrcast. And, of course, check out the award-winning Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, Fridays at noon. It's the main event and a 2-time podcast of the year, Fridays at noon, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, pretty much anywhere you enjoy podcasts. On Monday, we've got 2 shows, one with Tony Schiavone called What Happened When, and another 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Both of those are growing, and they're available for you for free every single Monday. As soon as you wake up on Monday morning, you can wake up and enjoy them on your morning drive. And if you have the WWE Network on Wednesdays, you can check out Something Else to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Those come out on Wednesday evening. All these shows are free. None of it is something that you have to come out of pocket for. And it's free to follow me on Twitter. I'm very active there, and I would love to talk to you about wrestling at Hey, it's Conrad.
Thank you, man. You're a busy man. I appreciate you taking the time out. Look forward to meeting you in Chicago at Starrcast, and beers will be on me in Chicago.
Hey, man, thanks for coming. We appreciate you being, so out front with your support of Starrcast. I know you were one of the first folks to sign up for Podcast Row, and I appreciate that you see the vision of what I'm trying to put together with that, and your support means a lot. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, you're like I said, I started listening in January, and I was like, you know what? I want to do this too. And Conrad's just like me, a wrestling nut. So if he can do it, I can do it.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, man.
All right, I want to thank Conrad Thompson, the Podfather himself, from 83 Weeks, What Happened When, and Something to Wrestle for joining me on, and the man behind Starrcast, which I will be at on Podcast Row. I really appreciate Conrad taking the time out and discussing all his ventures, everything. It was cool to kind of pick his brain a little bit there on some music in Huntsville, that Highly Suspect and Hailstorm, some cool bands that are major national acts now. And guess he saw them way before they were big time. So it was very cool. Conrad's a very, very cool dude, and very, very revolutionary in the way he's done things with podcasts, and especially wrestling podcasts, and having a wrestling podcast convention in Chicago. So it's going to be great stuff. If you haven't, go over to iTunes, subscribe to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, What Happened When with Tony Schiavone, and then Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Conrad hosts all three of those. Also go to the WWE Network and check out Something Else to Wrestle with. Conrad and Bruce is the video companion that goes with the podcast. There's some great stuff. There's so many great episodes. What Happened When is my favorite because Tony Schiavone's just a complete nut. But definitely go check all of them out. Highly recommend. I started on the Bruce Pritchard with the Monday Night Raw episode. That's a great place to start. The Schiavone episode, I went all the way back. Started with the Goldberg. 83 Weeks is just in their third or fourth episode. So go check it out. It's really, really good stuff. And if you're going to be in Chicago, make sure you're at Starrcast. If you're at Starrcast, come say hi to me, everybody that's going to be there. It's going to be a blast. So I want to do a little Aftershock promotion. As we know, Aftershock has been this big rock and metal festival here in Sacramento, California, that goes on every October. It's at Discovery Park in, I wouldn't call it downtown Sacramento, but it's near downtown Sacramento. And this year there's a great lineup. You can go back into the archives. When it was announced, I talked about the whole lineup, but I want to shine some light, on a few episodes here on some great bands. If you don't have tickets, I would definitely go to Aftershock.com and get your tickets now. They rise in price after a certain amount, or sold at a certain price. They raise the price, so I would definitely go do that. They also have VIP tickets, so I would definitely do that now. Go to Aftershock.com and get your tickets. But I wanted to spotlight, to me, the artist I'm most excited for is Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. Now, if you don't know who, obviously everybody knows Slash from Guns N' Roses, but this is kind of his solo project, and it's the main project he's been doing since about 2010. And him and Miles got kind of hooked up, doing this solo record that Slash had worked several years on, and it's just called Slash. So if you go on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and you just go and look for the album, it had a different singer for each song. So I think the first song had like Ian Raspberry from the Cult, Ozzy sang on a song, Fergie sang on a song. There's an instrumental with Dave Grohl playing drums, Lemmy sang on a song, Adam Levine from Maroon 5, Chris Cornell. There's just a whole bunch of different singers. But Miles sang on two songs called Back from Cali and Starlight, and Slash talks about in kind of different interviews that was when he decided, I got to take this on the road, and Miles has the voice to hit all the different ranges of this album, and the gun stuff, and some Velvet Revolver, and some Snake Pit. So that's kind of where that relationship started. That's a very, very good record. It's very diverse, very different, because there are some songs like with Adam Levine, with Chris Cornell, even Kid Rock and Iggy Pop that they sound like Slash, but they don't. They want to make Slash focus on trying to make that record more conducive to everybody, in that, hey, if I'm going to have a Kid Rock or an Adam Levine, it's got to sound like them, that particular song. I was introduced with Miles when he got into Alter Bridge with the guys in Creed, so it was very different. He was singing more just rock and roll than he was singing, I would call Creed kind of that, alternative rock metal-ish, so it was very different. But they have, after that, he kind of did it as a band. It's called Slash, featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. And they have 2 records out. They have Apocalyptic Love, which came out in 2011. And then they have World on Fire, which came out in 2014. Now, both these records are phenomenal. Apocalyptic Love has a great song like You're a Lie. Anastasia, which they still play. It's really good stuff. And the band is Slash on lead, Miles on lead vocals, Todd Dammit Kearns on bass, Brent Fitz on the drums, and Frank Sidoris joined the band after Apocalyptic Love and is the other guitar player, and he played on World on Fire. World on Fire, incredible record. If you didn't pick that one up, you need to pick it up. Songs like World on Fire, Shadow Life, 30 Years to Life, The Dissident, Battleground, just top to bottom, it is phenomenal. It's some of Slash's best work. It's right up there with the Guns stuff. So they've got 3 records out there. So it's very, very good, and the live show is good. And what you get with the live show with the band is just great stage presence. Slash doing his thing. Miles, what's so great, you can see how great a singer Miles is, because he sings all the Slash stuff that he's written with Slash, but then you also get some like Velvet Revolver. You get some Guns N' Roses. And you got to think about that. Basically, he's channeling Axl, Scott Weiland. They sometimes throw in some covers. Could be anything from Pink Floyd to Led Zeppelin. So he's got to channel all these different singers and bounce all this around, because the musicians are just playing. But Miles has to figure out how to sing it and make it sound good, which is incredible. And I saw him, the first time I really saw this band fully was in Oakland around 2012. I think they were on the Apocalyptic Love tour, and Miles had gotten sick a couple shows before. He had bronchitis, but he still came out. I mean, he sang Rocket Queen like it was no problem. So, and that's not an easy song to sing from Appetite, and he just went out and he just killed it. So it's phenomenal. And they're going to be at Aftershock, and they have a new record coming out this fall. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see where they go with this record, because World on Fire was really, really good. It was really good stuff. Miles is an incredible singer, and this is more, it meshes kind of that old GNR sound in rock and roll with more of a modern feel because of Miles' voice and kind of the dynamic of the band. So I would definitely go check their stuff out. If you're going to be at Aftershock, make sure that you are ready and check out their set. It's going to be good stuff. Aftershock, October 13th and 14th, Discovery Park here in Sacramento. Go get your tickets at aftershock.com. It's going to be good stuff. There's Alice in Chains is on the bill, Godsmack, Shine Down, Monster Magnet, Bullet for My Valentine, System of a Down, Incubus, and many more are going to be on the bill. So it's going to be really, really good. Go get your tickets now, because as the price rises, you don't want to wait till the last minute and pay a bunch. Go get those tickets now. After they're sold out at one tier price, the price goes up for the next tier. So go get your tickets. Do it now. It's going to be good stuff. October 13th, 14th, Discovery Park. All right. Want to thank once again Conrad Thompson for coming on, talking all about Starrcast. His 3 podcasts, 83 Weeks, What Happened When Monday, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, also something else to wrestle with on the WWE Network. Make sure you go check out all of his stuff. If you're going to be in Chicago for Starrcast, come say hi to me, come say hi to Conrad, come say hi to everybody. Starrcast is going to be August 30th through September 2nd in Chicago. The All-In weekend, based on that, Saturday night, I will be there as well. So it's going to be a good time. Make sure you follow on the Twitter, Nick's R&W Podcast, Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Instagram, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast on Facebook, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at Gmail, Rock and Wrestling Podcast on YouTube. Go to patreon.com. You got your basic packets, Parts Unknown package, and your Rockstar package. And if it's a little steep on the price, that's okay. Message me on any of my social media. I'll get right back to you. We can work something out. As I mentioned, next week will be Matt Kuhn the host of Wide Ended with Robbie E. Make sure you go check out that podcast tomorrow, as Marty Jannetty will be the guest, and I am a sponsor for that show with Marty Jannetty, so make sure you go check out that podcast. Make sure you check out all of Conrad's stuff. I thank you for all the support. We're going to have 2 episodes next week. Wednesday with Matt Kuhn, Thursday with Dr. Tom Pritchard, Bruce's brother. That is correct. So I thank you for all your support. Make sure you follow on all the social media. Love interacting with all you guys. I will see you right here next week on the Rock and Wrestling Podcast with my guest, Matt Kuhn. Make sure you listen to Why It Ended, and I will see you guys next week right here on the Rock and Wrestling Podcast.